At long last, decades after the screeching tires faded and the CB radios went silent, Sally Field, now 78 and more reflective than ever, has stepped out of the hush of Hollywood nostalgia to reveal a hidden truth about Smokey and the Bandit. One that most fans, despite countless rewatches, never pieced together, and it stunned audiences. Not because it changed the film's plot, but because it reframed its heart, its soul, and what it meant to her personally, professionally, and emotionally. A revelation that has reignited conversations around one of the most iconic films of the late 1970s. A film that wasn't just a high-octane car chase comedy, but for her a deeply coded love letter, an escape and an awakening wrapped inside horsepower, Coors beer, and Southern slang. And while fans have long speculated about her real-life romance with Burt Reynolds, the film's charismatic lead and cultural powerhouse at the time, what Sally Field revealed was that Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just her cinematic breakout, it was her personal rebellion. And the key to understanding her performance as Frog was not in her smile or sass, but in the fact that she was playing a woman desperate to reclaim her identity in the middle of a chaotic world, a reflection of what she herself was experiencing, behind the scenes, having just recently shaken off the shadow of the flying nun, which Hollywood refused to let her outgrow, and entering into a career-defining but emotionally turbulent relationship with Reynolds, a man she loved deeply, but whose fame often eclipsed and at times manipulated her spirit. And in a quiet, vulnerable moment during a recent interview for a film history documentary, she leaned forward and said, "I've never said this before, but Frog, she wasn't just running from a wedding. She was running from everything I was afraid of becoming," and then paused, visibly holding back tears, adding, "She was me without the brakes." And suddenly, the car chases, the wisecracks, the spontaneous laughter, and even the chemistry with Reynolds made new sense. Not as staged movie magic, but as an emotional explosion on camera. The product of a woman stepping into freedom while still tethered by uncertainty. Enfield explained that there were dozens of subtle moments in the film where her acting was unscripted, where her eyes told more than the dialogue, like when she first steps into the Trans Am and glances sideways at Reynolds. What fans thought was flirty was actually her trying not to cry because, as she admitted, "That was the moment I knew I had fallen in love with him, and I didn't know how to protect myself from what that would mean." And that line alone cracked open decades of Hollywood lore, prompting journalists, fans, and film critics to revisit the film with fresh eyes. And what they began to notice were layers of emotion buried under the hood of what was marketed as a popcorn flick, scenes where Frog's laughter seemed forced, moments when she stared off in silence while Bandit talked, cuts that lingered a second too long on her expression, all of which Field confirmed were left in because the director, Needham, saw something raw in me that day and chose not to cover it up. And while fans always marveled at her quick wit and elegance, what they never realized was that much of her performance came from real confusion and conflict, especially as she tried to navigate a set dominated by testosterone, stunts, and Southern machismo, while also enduring the intensity of Reynolds' affections off camera, which she now reflects on with a mix of love and regret, calling their relationship beautiful, consuming, and sometimes suffocating. And she detailed how the production schedule was grueling, the filming environments unpredictable, and that several of her most iconic lines, like her famous "Would a cop pull you over for going 110 miles an hour, were improvised out of pure adrenaline, and fear not of the scene but of losing herself in the role, something she admitted haunted her during the making of the sequel, which she almost refused to do and which she now reveals she only agreed to because she was terrified of letting Reynolds down despite their growing emotional distance by then. And she finally confessed that her final day on set of the original film was marked by a private breakdown in her trailer, where she sobbed alone for an hour before filming her last scene, overwhelmed by the duality of what the film had become, a massive cultural hit and a deeply personal burden. And she recounted a conversation with Jerry Reed, who played Snowman, where he told her, "You don't have to outrun anything but yourself." A comment that stuck with her for years and became the emotional hinge of her revelation decades later. And she shared that the film's closing credits, those final laughs and grins, were hard to watch for years because they reminded her of a girl trying to be free while still chained to the idea that love required sacrifice. And what blew fans' minds even more was her statement that the original ending to the movie was different. Frog was supposed to get out of the car and walk away, not ride off with Bandit, but that Reynolds himself asked them to change it, insisting people want to believe love is forever. And Field now says she agreed at the time, but secretly wished Frog had walked away, not out of anger, but as a symbol of self-respect. And she concluded her revelation by saying, "I don't regret Smokey and the Bandit. It gave me Burt, it gave Emmy wings, but I wish more people had seen that it wasn't just a romp, it was a woman driving toward herself." And the moment that aired, the internet exploded with reactions. Film blogs reevaluated the movie as a feminist metaphor disguised As action comedy, fans posted side-by-side video clips with her new quotes. TikTok creators dissected her scenes with fresh context, and even former crew members chimed in with behind-scenes stories, confirming Field's influence on set, like how she demanded a rewrite of her character's introduction to give Frog more agency, or how she personally choreographed the scene where she changes clothes in the car, because she wanted to show vulnerability without objectification. And film schools began citing her performance as an example of layered subtextual acting. A course shift from the way it was previously taught as mere comedic timing, and in a surprising twist, Field revealed that she kept a personal diary during the shoot filled with sketches, notes, and poems about identity and love that she's now considering turning into a memoir, possibly titled Frog in the Rearview, which would not only tell the real story of Smokey and the Bandit, but also serve as a mirror for women who've ever had to find themselves inside someone else's story. And she hinted that the book would include never-before-seen letters between her and Reynolds, including one he wrote a week before his death, where he said, "You were the real stunt, Sally. You jumped further than all of us," a line that left her speechless and now lives framed on her wall. And as she looked into the camera during the final minutes of the interview, she said softly, "If you watch the movie again, look for the girl who isn't laughing. She's the one who finally found her way home." And fans all over the world did just that, replaying the film not for the cars, not for the laughs, but for the quiet moments in Sally Field's eyes, the unsaid lines in her silences, and the courage it took for a woman to finally say out loud what had been hiding in plain sight since 1977. And in that moment, Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just a classic anymore. It became a confession, a time capsule, and a truth that only Sally Field could finally steer into the light. Not with speed, but with grace,